Oh, man.
It was a week where Toronto FC were outplayed, outpressed, outcoached, and looked out of ideas at times, leaving us with plenty of questions about the club at this admittedly early stage of the season. This is Waking the Red Weekly, presented by Footy Talk. My name is Mitchell Kearney, and ahead on the show, we'll talk about the slow start to the year, more moves potentially on the way, getting healthy, and plenty more. Brendan Dunlop is our guest this week. He'll stop by to talk about his new book, Hero, My Life, and with Canadian soccer legend Dwayne De Rosario about his life and career. But first, boys, big game today for the lads. I touched the wrong side of my chest. I'm not used to the mirroring screen here, but left the Adidas part. But yeah, looking forward to that. I mean, it's not as big for your guys, Michael. You maybe let us have this one, but I would do another one.
Boys, I did it. I did it this morning. I went and did the damn thing. I got the job, boys.
Nice.
I got vaccinated. And for any of you guys out there that's wondering, super easy. You didn't really even feel it in the process.
No, not at all.
Was super smooth. So if you guys haven't been vaccinated yet, I highly recommend you go out there and do that. And that's kind of a positive spin on the week that's been so far for Toronto FC. That's my positive takeaway so far.
that you got vaccinated.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yeah. I think
fair enough.
We're starting to get to a good stage here. We're all starting to get vaccinated, so let's just stay smart for another month or two while we let the vaccines catch up with the virus. And hopefully here's to a great summer for all of us, and hopefully a great summer for Toronto FC as well, because the spring has not really been ideal. I mean, they played 7 games so far, only 1 win. They've conceded in all 7, and that was the case again this week, losing to the New York Red Bulls as well as losing 4-1 on aggregate, 1-0 in the match to Cruz Azul. I guess your guys' general thoughts on a tough week for Toronto FC, again, one where they're still not fully healthy, still not back to the squad we were hoping to see when they're all the way there, but still at least a couple of concerns, I think, coming out of this week.
A couple, Mitch.
Mike's written like 12 articles on each factor of what's bothering us presently. So
I wish I could encompass it all, man. There's just not enough words right now. Obviously, let's preface this by saying that the TFC were missing some crucial players there on Saturday, especially Pozuelo, Jonathan Osorio, Josie Altidore. That being said, you look at the lineup that was put out there, at least on paper. And for me, that's a result that you could have gotten, or at least played a little bit better. It's not a bad lineup that Chris Armas put out there by any means. Those are players in the past that and that they've been able to do something when they're on the field. For whatever reason, I mean, the Red Bulls definitely got the better of Chris Armas's game plan, whatever it was, and they've got the better of Toronto FC's players who, quite frankly, just weren't up for the battle on Saturday. So, there's not much to really take away from that game. And just, it was one of the worst games, thinking back, let's think back to last season. Last season, there were maybe 4 games off the top of my head that were really, really poor for Toronto FC. You think back to that Philadelphia Union game?
Yep. That's number 1.
Nashville playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely awful. Nashville playoffs. There was a game against Vancouver during that all-Canadian classic, or whatever you guys want to call it, for the Canadian Championship. And then there was
MLS is back.
MLS is back, New York City FC.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but aside from that Philadelphia Union game, that was the worst that I've seen Toronto FC play in the last 12 months. And you can even go all the way back to the summer of 2019. That was the worst that I've seen them play beside that Philadelphia game. So there is reason for concern there, because like we started off the bat of the show, there's a lot of issues going on with this team. And right now, solutions seem like they're very bleak, like the odds of them coming through. It doesn't seem like it's there with the group that's in front of them, at least. So what we're hoping for right now is the return of Alejandro Pozuelo. And I know a lot of people are like, well, it's just one player. Like, that shouldn't make that much of a difference. He's the MVP for a reason. He's the most valuable player to Toronto FC, to the most valuable player to a team. He makes a team that much better the most out of anybody in the league. So, yes, Alejandro Pozuelo does make the world of a difference, especially when he's one of the few players that can play that number 10 role, which I think was a major problem on Saturday. So, again, this team has, on paper, one of the best teams in all of MLS. It's a team that I believe will turn it around. But what we've seen so far from this Toronto FC team has just not been good enough from so many different aspects. So I'm hoping, tomorrow night against Columbus SC, Columbus Crew, whatever you want to call them, that this team, puts in a performance, because we're reaching a point where these results, they got to start showing some desperation. These results are going to pile up. They are going to matter. So if we don't see a desperate Toronto FC side on Wednesday, you got to ask questions about whether or not Chris Armas is getting the best out of his players, if he's doing his job to motivate his players. Are the players doing their job to sort of, help Chris Armas out and do their job on the pitch? At a certain point, a coach can only do so much. So then, I can go on a rant about days, but Jeff, let's hear what you have to say.
I could go on a rant for days, but let's get Jeff talking. This is so dangerous because my default setting when things start going even a little bit or pear-shaped for TFC is to turn Gallows humor up to 11. And I really felt like I was a reactionary hot take machine on our post-game show. And, it doesn't behoove me to start throwing out elbows, despite the fact that it seems to be my default setting. I agree with everything you're saying. I think there's a lot of catastrophizing going on in the TFC Live community, both on WTR and in the wider social media landscape. I think people are writing Armas off already. And I don't necessarily think that that's the way to go, but he's not covering himself in glory right now. So, the reality is somewhere in the middle. I think there's a lot riding on this game tomorrow, much more than just taking on the defending MLS Cup champion. I wonder if they're going to have time to get new uniforms, or if they're just going to have duct tape on the badge with like a reasonable hand-drawn facsimile.
Those CONCACAF patches that always peel off.
That's so
yeah.
funny.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yeah.
You make a good point there. Like, let's not get carried away with this. Way too early for any sort of Armas out talk. That's really unfair. I think any coach coming into a new environment, they're going to have some sort of growing pains, especially when you want to instill a completely different type of system. So that's kind of expected. What I'm saying in terms of that Columbus match is, even if they don't go out there and get the result, there's got to be some will from this Toronto FC team. There's got to be some more fight in them. There's got to be. It looks like the players, at least on Saturday, it looks like they gave up halfway through that game, and that was the debut of Jefferson Soteldo. Right? That was supposed to be their spark, and it looked anything but. It looked like Soteldo was the only one out there that was trying to sort of, make something happen, and everyone else was kind of just settled on giving him the ball and watching, right? So, again, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, it's almost like we've changed places. Over the last 2 weeks, I've been rallying about stuff that I really had no business excluding COVID from, right? And now I feel the temptation to consistently reintroduce the facets of the struggle, right? We haven't played a home game in the same stadium twice. Injuries have to be compounded by the weirdo training regimen, if you can even call it a regimen, because we were totally under the knife of when we could fit training in, et cetera, et cetera. So it's weird that I'm kind of falling back on that now. The thing that keeps tickling the gallows humor part of my brain is, we knew all this coming into the season. So was it maybe the right idea to bring in a guy that's going to change everything and demand that kind of physicality? I mean, there may not be a right, proper time at any time, and nobody knows the future. But looking at it now, at the, where we are in the season, you have to wonder. It's that little doubt that's creeping into my head, like, couldn't we have seen this coming, right? Like, it's not like these injuries are a surprise. So it just seems like, doubling down on Lady Luck or the soccer gods to try and do this in this specific timeline. And that gives me pause.
Yeah, let's even put the injuries aside for a second.
I wish we could.
Like I said off the top, off the bat there, Jeff.
Mhm.
On paper, that team that Armas put out there yesterday, I see no reason why they can't go out there and at least, put up a fight to draw that game, put up a fight to, get some result in that game. It's a talented team on paper. Albeit, yeah, they were missing a number 10, but you can't just be settled on sticking to that one same structure. Right? You got to be willing to adjust then if you don't have the right tools there. Because again, these are players who are very capable players in Major League Soccer, and they didn't look like it on Saturday. They looked like a team that couldn't string together 3, 4, 5 passes, which, I mean, yes, we want to play on the counter press. We want to play direct. We want to get at teams. But at the end of the day, like, you got to be able to play some sort of footy, some sort of soccer, which has been this team's identity the past, before Armas, before like the last 5 years. So we know they can do it. And for whatever reason, like, I get they're trying to buy into their coach's vision, but there's got to be some balance there. And it just, for me, it wasn't there yet.
Can I bring up what first, just quickly? Can I bring up what Gavin's comment? And it was Sir Alex Ferguson, his first few seasons at Man U weren't great. You have to trust in the complete rebuild, different way of training, different day-to-day runnings. You have to allow time for changes. And Ryan also wrote at the outset, how much this transition. I don't like rebuild because there's a lot of roster continuity, and rebuild sort of implies that doesn't exist. So I prefer to call it a transition. But Ryan said the same thing. He said, this reminds me a lot of Liverpool when Klopp first came in. And I remember, fans on both. I mean, when Alex came in, we didn't have social media, so it was the Man U fanzine that was screaming bloody murder. But I do remember the response to Klopp from the Liverpool fans, and they were like, "Get this guy out of here! What is he doing to our team?" So it's not a surprise what's happening here in TFC land. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mitch. I was trying to jam that in there.
No worries. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect on today's show. I did not expect Chris Armas to get compared to Sir Alex Ferguson. That's certainly not not something that I thought was in the cards, but here we are. I think the Pozuelo thing's a good point because in terms of comparison, we didn't see this club without Pozuelo last year. He was there for every single game. That's part of why he won the MVP. So we don't know what this team looks like without Pozuelo. And the past couple of games, I mean, I actually think Toronto started okay, even against the Red Bulls. I know, obviously it very quickly went south, but in both those games, they've started well. They've looked on the front foot, but then both times, like, it became very clear that once they won that ball back in the advanced positions, like, they didn't have the guys to make it tick, to make those chances. And the second you're an opponent, you see that, and it's like, okay, if we do give the ball away, like, what's the
risk?
They're
hopeless. Exactly.
Then you have the confidence to go forward. And again, once Toronto FC's gotten that first goal against, they've just their system falls apart because the other team's just not worried in the same way about what Toronto FC might do. So again, I think it's so important that they get those offensive technicians back, and we know they have a couple of them in the team, but obviously right now, it's not ideal when Pozuelo and Osorio and Altidore to some extent, and Ayo hasn't quite looked 100%, although he's looked at least decent. That'd be my main point on those two games.
Those are. I mean, you're bang on there, Mitch. Like, even Armas himself in the post-game presser, he said it. Like, the game was sort of in the balance there in the first half. For me personally, like, yes, TFC did show a bit of fight there in the first half, but like, that's still not good enough for me against a team like the New York Red Bulls. This team should be outplaying the New York Red Bulls hands down. Like, I don't want the game to be there in the balance. I want TFC to take that game. Especially against, New York Red Bulls are playing very well right now. It's a place that TFC have not found much success in the past. So let me preface that by saying I still expect TFC to go out there and, outplay the opposition. Look at the games against the New York Red Bulls last season where TFC played them. And by and large, TFC outplayed the Red Bulls last season. It was a Caden Clark, spectacular strike that tied the game late in that match for New York Red Bulls when they were, virtually outplayed. Again, this is a side without Alejandro Pozuelo. I talked about how much he means to this team. It's disappointing to see that it's not even close to the level it is when we know that Pozuelo can be in this side. There's just a big drop off that just isn't acceptable. And let's give Armas time as well to kind of fix that problem, because bad games do happen. It's just we haven't seen the best of this TFC team yet, in my opinion.
What are you talking about? Remember Lyon? It was amazing. Remember that game against Lyon?
It was amazing for the parts that were there. Yes. The side that they put out, the result that they earned, it was amazing. In terms of TFC being at their best through 7 games, we just haven't seen it yet.
Well, it seems like Brendan is here, so maybe we'll get his thoughts on how all things Toronto FC are going right now. We'll bring him on whenever he's ready. Now joined by the author of D-Row My Life, Mr. Brendan Dunlop. How you doing?
What's up, guys? I'm good. How are you?
What's going on, man? Thanks for doing this.
Well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I even had my internet reset literally minutes ago. I was on the phone with the provider. We do the Footy Prime podcast. James Sharman, Danny Dicchio, Christian Jack, and I. Not Christian Jack, Craig Forrest. I'm still in the score days. We do that. We do that quite often, actually. I did a show with Singh once on Sports and Central, and she turned to the Score Studios, and I went, "Are you serious? That was 15 years ago, and I never even worked at the Score with you." And it was just, it's funny how the mind works that way. So anyway,
I want that microphone, man. That microphone is like smooth jazz ridiculousess. I love it. It's pretty fantastic. Your dulcet tones are.
Thank you, buddy. The voice and the hair are, two of the few things I got going for me. So I gotta maximize.
Let's go. The hair looks on point. Between you and Mitch, I don't know, man. There's some competition there. It's pandemic too, and you still got it going.
Yeah, and you trimmed your beard, so now I think my beard's longer than yours, and I was expecting you to blow me out of the water. So.
No, but I should be coaching either in the Serie A or the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League with this hair.
Little Patrick Waugh there. I like it.
Fabulous.
Trying to make the all hockey hair team. Before we get into the book, let's talk a little bit about Toronto FC here. 3 games in, obviously, into the MLS season. The atmosphere around TFC not exactly positive right now. How worried do you think the club should be about this slow start?
I mean, I think, to be honest, I think the club expected it. You look at the attitude shift that had happened, over the last couple of years, where they, committed this summer to backing the young kids, and you're always going to have growing pains with that. I think that they have a very good crop to grow with. It's worth going through those pains for certainly the potential that we see in quite a few guys that are starting to finally get meaningful minutes now. So, throw a new coach into the mix. Still a pandemic. They're not playing at home. They're not living a normal routine. There's a lot of new players now into this system, and these young guys who are experiencing professional life for the first time in a very unconventional way. Those are all factors. So to be honest, I think that they thought defensively they might be a little solid in a few situations in a couple of matches, but I think that they expected to experience some growing pains, and that's what you're seeing now.
Yeah. On that sort of note, Brendan, how much does this team miss Alejandro Pozuelo?
Oh,
how much a difference can he make, man?
He's the engine. He's the absolute engine. I was very excited to see Soteldo come on for a few minutes, and the acquisition of Jefferson Soteldo too. I feel as though he's a player that will very much complement Pozuelo, and they haven't truly had that as Josie Altidore has declined and been unable to be on the pitch and really contribute the way that he once did. There's not really another player of that ilk that complements Alejandro Pozuelo. So you have that in Soteldo now, and I think as the season goes on, and hopefully it doesn't take too long, that he reaches the Piatti level chemistry with Pozuelo, and then the sky's the limit for the two of them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Man, as long as you speak in that voice through that microphone, everything sounds perfectly agreeable, and I'm totally on team Dunlop.
So maybe I should get on the phone for Columbus Crew and talk to their supporters and convince them that the logo change is a good idea.
Dude, segue. This is my question. You just segued perfectly into my question. So, seeing as team names and rebrands are all the rage, it was cool to read D-Row's thoughts on the naming and the badging of Toronto FC right from the get-go. What did you think? Because he was like, well, of course our boys have to be in red. And I was like, but traditionally Toronto teams play in blue and Montreal teams play in red. The Canadian national team plays in red, but that's kind of arrogant Torontoism to encourage that. Were you all in from the get-go, or were you like, why is it FC? You know, why can't we be the Toronto Towers or whatever?
No, I don't think I wanted a moniker like that, but I did feel as though FC was just so simple. I felt as though, I forget some of the other names at the time. There was some, culturally influenced names. Was there a Spartak or
Spartak Toronto, Real Toronto? I mean, come on.
It wasn't Real, but there was something Eastern European. It's
yeah.
I can't remember what it was. And I thought, well, that still seems, rather isolated and an homage to the past, Toronto, Croatia. Won the soccer bowl. I get that. But I did think that maybe Toronto FC was a bit too simple. But I did love the crest, and I personally did love that they went with red because they were Canada's team.
Right.
They were, Canada's first team, and at that time, I mean, who knew if there would be others? And one of the things that I've been, asked about lately is, is MLS more popular because of Dwayne DeRosario? Absolutely. And I do, I think we have to ask, would there may not be 3 teams in Major League Soccer if, you didn't have the best player in the league, Canadian, lighting it up and being the human highlight reel that he was. I think that absolutely convinced investors and convinced the league to expand north. So you may have got them eventually, but, the way expansion fees have gone, if they didn't get in when they did, they may not have ever got in.
Toronto swoops in. We were the first. We're claiming red for the whole nation. It's a very Toronto thing to do. So it's to point. Absolutely.
All right. We are joined by Brendan Dunlop, whose new book, your book on Dwayne DeRosario, an autobiography by Dwayne DeRosario, drops today. Dero My Life, and you guys can actually order that today. And Jeff kind of referred to a really interesting excerpt there from the book where Dwayne DeRosario talks about his reaction to seeing Toronto FC become established. Really well written, Brendan. I couldn't even. I was reading it up to I was a little bit late to join the call, and people were wondering. I was just stuck to that book, man, because I cannot put it down. So
yeah, I burned through chapters 9 to 12. It was crazy. Yeah,
those are the Toronto FC chapters for those who picked the book. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And let's talk a little bit about that book. How did that book manifest, and how much was written pre-pandemic, and what was that like?
Yeah, great question, and thank you again for the congratulations.
Really good question, eh?
He wrote it himself. I had nothing to do with it.
I actually took it from Jeff once again. That's our theme on this show, so that's why we're making that joke. But yeah, Brendan.
Verbatim. He took it verbatim, but that's
it was writing in general, as all of you know, can be a real marathon process, and a book even more so, of course. So we actually started this project shortly after he retired. I think we spoke the very beginning of 2016, and we kind of started working.
Did he approach you there?
No, we had the same agent at the time. I approached him. So when he retired, I kind of got the idea. Ken Reed, who I worked with at Sportsnet for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Several books. Also with the same publisher, ECW Press. So I actually owe Ken Reed, massive hockey guy. Not exactly the biggest
hockey cards.
Fan, as you know. Yeah, hockey card stories. He's got quite a few books. He did one with Eddie Shack. He did one with Dennis Maroop. And so at his first book launch, I showed up with a bunch of other guys from work. I think Sid Sixero and some behind the scenes guys. Thomas Dobby might have been with me at the time. And, we're giving our congratulations, cheers a beer. And he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Dunlop, when you write a book about the effing Bundesliga or whatever, I'll be there." I don't know if I'd write a book about the Bundesliga, but I can't believe that you got the name right. I'm like, maybe I should write a book. And then I think Dwayne maybe had just retired before that, or there was something that sparked like, man, Dwayne's story would be epic. Here's a guy who was always very colorful, considerably more candid than most athletes whenever he spoke on television and whenever there was a mic in front of his face. And I thought, he's going to have some incredible stories to write in a book if he wants to open up about that. And so it was a long process in being able to put it together. I'd never written a book before. It was a first project of this kind of magnitude for Dwayne as well. So also, it was a busy time adjusting to retirement life. He was working as an ambassador for MLSE. He has 4 children. He's a very, very active dad. He's Uber dad. He's always in the car. Two kids in high-level soccer academies. His son is a goalkeeper at Toronto FC in the academy system right now. And Azaze was at New York City and is playing overseas. So timing was kind of a difficult thing. But no, we would have wrapped this up before the pandemic. Then his father passed away. His father passed away, which is a big part of the book, and his father was such a big part of his life. Coach Tony, massive in Scarborough. Like anyone who played soccer in a certain time period that stretched, long after Dwayne was a pro. But anyone who played soccer in Scarborough knows Tony and had an experience with Tony. So that was a massive loss for Dwayne. And I guess the blessing in the sense of the pandemic is that allowed us to feature a conclusion in the book and really tie things together. So I know that was difficult for Dwayne to open up about and be so vulnerable about, because it was still very, very raw, this being the start of the pandemic. But yeah, to finally have it out, and I can't go into a store where I live to go pick it up, but when I'm able to actually do that, I think it'll truly sink in then. It's been pretty surreal so far, and the reception has been very good. So honestly, it means a lot from you guys who read so much and watch so much, know the game so well, to say that it was an easy and enjoyable read. That's the best compliment.
Well, there's a great story about when Kurt Cobain heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for the first time on the radio, and he had to pull the car over and had a moment. So yours is going to be amazing when you see the display of your books with your name on it. You also segued into my second question, well, my third question, if you don't count the one that Mike said. I was surprised just how brutally honest D-Row was in the book. I mean, he pulls absolutely no punches. Did you encourage that, or was there a moment where you were like, maybe we should scale this back because we might find horse heads in our pillows, or whatever the case may be?
I think, to be honest, that's a compliment. If you've actually gone that far where you might, ruffle some real feathers. We live in a day and age where anybody's offended about everything, right?
Yep.
So if you tried to not offend anyone, would anybody be interested? Would anybody read it? What I loved about that was that Dwayne was just, authentic. He was brutally honest. And so for me, I did put a lot of responsibility, I guess, on the review process, just to, so much time had passed. A lot of these chats that we did, were 3 years before finishing the manuscript and sending to the publisher. So I think I was a little more on that maybe than him at times. It was like, okay, just want to make sure you're cool with chapter 8. You're talking about going for noodles and the conversation that fell apart before Celtic. Yeah, I was a little bit inquisitive about that from my journalistic background, I guess. But truly, I mean, I had the green light from him the whole way in just being honest. And really, it's funny that kind of the reviews and things that he picked on, it was, I got an intersection wrong, or I didn't give, I didn't give this block or this community, a long enough line. He wanted to add to that. Those were kind of the things in the review process that really stood out to him, was just, amplifying Scarborough and adding more color to some of those stories from his childhood and from his hometown.
You allow him to contradict himself, which I think is really interesting, right? Like at the outset of his TFC career, it's a direct quote. He's like, I didn't need any of the extra perks. But then when the DP situation sort of starts happening, he's like, well, I would have loved a condo to flip, or whatever the case may be. And I think that humanizes him, and it allows for the kind of vitriol that he sprouts out later, because he's being honest from all angles, right? We're all complicated people, and our priorities change, and that's human. So I just thought it was really interesting, and I inhaled those chapters. So I'm very much looking forward to when this is over, so I can fill in the blanks. And I am looking forward to that coda, because he does mention his father quite a bit in what I've read, but without context. So now that I know what a major role that he plays in the wider Toronto soccer mosaic, I think I'm going to pay extra careful attention to those passages. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that, it's kind of inspired me to want to do the book too. You guys all know that in covering soccer in this country, there's a protectionism and, responsibility, I think, that we feel to grow the game that is quite unique to other sports. I've worked and covered other sports, and I don't think a lot of other guys, necessarily feel that. The sports are more mainstream. The relationship is just different between the fan, the media, the club. But we definitely feel that, I think, in a different and a special way. So yeah, to kind of help amplify Dwayne's story and get more out there, that was something that was really important to me, and a story that I was very curious about. I learned a lot about Dwayne in this process as well, and learned a lot about kind of how things go behind the scenes at the top level. You mentioned the condo flipping there, and he was that wasn't something that he knew existed. And once he saw it happening, and it wasn't happening, it didn't happen to him, and he was being told, hey, this, that, or whatever, then you start to think you're not being given the honest hand, right? So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
how many condos did they give Blaise Matuidi in Miami? That's what I'd like to know.
We'll find out at some point. You spoke about growing the game there, Brendan, and we are seeing the sport reach new heights in Canada right now with Alphonso Davies and Kadisha Buchanan and all these players doing incredible things, and the teams as well. But how important is it to look back at a story like this and to look at Dwayne's past and his experience with the sport in Canada and kind of learn from the lessons that he did in order to eventually get to that next level?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, he really was a trailblazer in a lot of senses, and I used the comparison. I did an all sports show recently, and was asked, what would the comparison be, for hockey or another sport? And I thought, well, if you think about Connor McDavid now, in this day and age, we all get to watch his games, and you pay a little bit more, and you get to see all 82 games in a normal season. That wasn't the case for Wayne Gretzky. That wasn't the case for Steve Nash. And D-Row was playing at the exact same time as Steve Nash, two Canadians at the height of American sport in their respective sports. And we saw the highlights and we saw the playoff runs and maybe the finals. And that was really it. So I think for a lot of people, whether they were fully immersed in soccer at that time, they didn't truly get to see and appreciate kind of all of that unless they were in one of those markets or followed one of those teams. Of course, if they're Canadian, that was highly unlikely, right? So I think in kind of telling that story, that was important to me because I knew that there was so much there. I knew, that how much he meant to Major League Soccer. And a few people have told me when they saw him named to MLS's greatest 25 list, and they're Toronto-based people, but who have followed the game and been involved in the game for at least a decade. They were surprised to see him on there. They didn't recognize the impact that he'd made, before coming to Toronto or. Other than that 2011 season and winning MVP, playing for 3 squads, being the only player in any sport to ever do that, they kind of thought that was the peak, that was the highlight. But long before that, mid 2000s, winning those 4 titles with San Jose and 2 with San Jose and 2 with Houston, he was the top of the game, one of the faces of the league. So, yeah, to amplify that and kind of let that story be have a spotlight on it when there's so much noise and so much shine about everything else out there in the world. I thought that was truly important. I'm glad that he's getting that now.
And that was the thing there, Brendan, that when I was reading this was, I'm a big D-Row fan. For me personally, when he came to Toronto FC, I was hooked. He's Guyanese like I am. He's a local guy, and I kind of like really, I felt attached to his story. I was a kid who was trying to make it here in Canada, and seeing a local guy play for Toronto FC, that meant something to me. So I knew a lot about D-Row's story already. But when reading this book, it's a walk down memory lane and then some. It's we think back. We're living in a golden generation right now in terms of Canadian prospects and in terms of Canadians overseas. And it wasn't that long ago where Dwayne De Rosario was kind of, as you mentioned there, Brendan, breaking ground here in Toronto. And that, I think you encompass that really well there in your story. And for me, that's one of the highlights so far early on. I haven't really quite got as far as I want to, but I just want to point that out because for anybody like that's listening, it does serve as a subtle reminder as to how far we've come in such a short period of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's kind of bracing. Yeah,
it truly does. And even going through some of the photos in that when he first arrived, and to see BMO Field as it was before the expansion, before the grandstands, it feels like that should be 20, 30 years ago. It feels such a different time. It's in such a smaller park, whereas we know the stadium now to truly feel like a fortress. They always sang about it being the fortress on the lakeshore, but it looks like one now, and it feels like one now. And the game has evolved, and a lot of that, I think he has kind of an impact and a measurable impact on a lot of the growth in Canadian soccer. And also, talking about styles in these players, there were very few players when he, came in the national program that were allowed to play with such flair and creativity. And it certainly wasn't encouraged, which he gets into in the book. It took a long time before there was a trust from his coaching staff wherever he was to just allow that freedom and that creativity to bring a little Joga Bonito out there on the pitch when maybe it hadn't existed in some of those sides before.
It's true.
So I think that, without Dwayne De Rosario, I don't know if you get 3-4 guys in the Canadian national team squad who are able to play with that flair and inspired by that. So yeah, I truly enjoy as a Canadian fan. Obviously, it's kind of seeing that impact and seeing several different players that seem to have taken a lot of inspiration from that, and were able to do so at a very early age. They were probably doing that at academy level, wherever they were. So.
Yep. Well, Brendan, congratulations again, and thank you so much for joining us on the show this week.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thanks very much.
I'm upset that the pandemic has robbed us of the book launch where you would also wear a gunmetal charcoal gray suit. That's all I have to say.
You guys are on the video. I am wearing a Scarborough Hustle hoodie.
Oh, there we go.
Let's
go.
Shout out to Scarborough Hustle. Erin has started the company in the pandemic from her home, and she's letting the community represent and put some shine on the community. So I'm happy to wear it as well. I lived in Scarborough for 10 years, and I rode that subway from Kennedy Station all the way to Kipling to go to university.
Nice.
I know all about that Scarborough life. So thank you guys.
The East-West line.
Oh man.
Cheers.
Kennedy to Kipling, the whole run. So, available now again, guys. Appreciate it. All major retailers and most Canadian independent bookstores as well. So if you want to support local, please take a look there.
Yeah,
you should absolutely pick up a copy.
Before you go quickly, Brendan, any plan? I know you guys were planning on doing a book tour before the pandemic hit. Again, I guess let's call it. Are there any plans in the works for you to kind of do something like that maybe later this summer?
I would hope so, to be honest. I mean, Dwayne's actually in the States now, and he's doing a rather traditional tour through the States. So he's in Miami tonight, and he'll be in New York. There'll be a billboard up in Times Square when he's in New York.
Hey, get out of here.
Yeah, pretty cool. So I'm,
That's
hoping that
cool.
the situation improves in Ontario. Obviously, we're able to maybe do something at perhaps a TFC game or do a book signing. Looking forward to just having his fans read the book and eventually getting able to meet and talk to some people too.
Yeah, hopefully fans can see that hair in person, right?
Thanks.
Cheers.
Anytime, buddy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brendan. I'm surprised Dunlop thought I could read.
It's giving you way too much credit there, eh?
I know,
yeah. But he's going to do the audiobook with that microphone, so I think you're sorted, my friend.
Yeah, this book's been a long time coming. Again, thank you, Brendan Dunlop, for joining us. We've had D-Row on in the past, and he's kind of teased this book a little bit for us, and it's finally here. And like we've said, like Jeff and I at least have both kind of dug into this book a little bit, and I'm not even kidding. I couldn't even put it down. Like I'm not even. I know I'm supposed to be a journalist, but I'm not even like a big book reader in general. And I'm telling you, man, that actually had me hooked. And I'm not even just trying to sell anything for Brendan.
No.
Like, if you're a TFC fan, like that was some great content. So make sure you guys go check that out. Go pick up that book, and you won't regret it.
I do wish that. Did you guys all read Molinaro's big read on Sportsnet's website? It's got to be about 5 years old now. Yeah, I know the rights are probably terrible, but that should really be in a trade paperback, because it would be terrific to have that on my shelf, my TFC shrine shelf, next to Clokey's book and now Brendan's book, and anyway, you can dream.
That's all right. Yeah, I think Martin's asking, is someone chewing in the background? I think Mitch, your mic might be a little bit too close to your mouth there. I feel like it was picking up a little bit of sound, but that's all right. So apologies to anyone who kind of picked that up. But let's move on. Let's talk some more. Let's talk some more TFC.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the goalie debate a little bit. I know this is something that's come up a lot in the past week, and Quentin Westberg has, for whatever reason, been second fiddle to Alex Bono throughout this year. And I mean, look, Bono was really good in the Champions League. I think he probably helped them. He probably helped them certainly get past Club Leon for sure, and he's definitely made some big saves. But the big thing for me, and we talked about it earlier in the show, in terms of Toronto FC's passing ability and their ball retention. I mean, we all know distribution's not the strong suit in Alex Bono's game. I mean, you can look at the pure numbers. I think it's 60.5% of his passes have been completed this season. So, that's 40% of the passes immediately to the other team. And it doesn't matter what style you're playing. You need to keep the ball at some extent. Like, bad giveaways are bad giveaways, whether you're playing a high pressing game or you're playing a possession based game. And I know TFC want to take more risks, but I mean, that's not a risk, is lumping the ball forward and losing it, right? So that's That's one of the big things for me right now. And we know Westberg's good. I mean, he had 78.2% last year. They were playing a different system, but we know even on the long balls, like he's just more accurate than Bono. So
well, we've all seen Ollie's heat map tweet, right?
That too.
I don't even. You don't even need a heat map to see this. It's so glaringly obvious. I don't even care what the analytics say. Like the amount of times that Alex Bono gives the ball away is mind-boggling to me. I don't want again. Alex Bono is not the problem with this Toronto FC team. Let me stress that again. If Alex Bono is in net, he is a goalie that can win you games, for sure. But for me, like, when he does kick the ball upfield, which is quite often, especially under Armis's style of play, they want to win the second ball back. They want to get on the counter press, all of that. He's not even giving TFC a chance to get to that second ball. He's not even giving TFC a chance to, get into a battle for that first ball. That ball is being hit it's so misplaced that the New York Red Bulls, for example, their defense is it's one header back to their other defender. They have time to literally read the play when it's supposed to be a 50-50 ball and make an easy kind of header to their defender. So, like, yes, we can talk about Armis changing his style of play and why it's not important for your goalkeeper to be great with your feet. I mean, he has to be decent with his feet, right? And I think right now, I just don't see it with Alex Bono there, and I think it's actually a big problem why TFC are kind of defending the entire match. Because you have to go back to your goalkeeper in soccer. Like I don't care if you don't want to play that style of system. At the end of the day, your goalkeeper is going to have to use their feet quite a bit. And right now, it hasn't been working out for Alex Bono. I'm with Chris Armis there. I don't think he's really at fault for any of the goals that have gone in. But the goalkeeper position is not just about saving goals. We've written articles about this. Quentin Westberg himself has talked about this. Christian Jack has talked about this. The goalkeeper position is about so much more than just having, stopping shots, which Alex Bono is really good at. But for me, I just think it's overdue that Quentin Westberg, gets a shot in net for this team. He should have gotten a shot in one of those 7 matches. And we're approaching match number 8. And I've said this on our post-game show, I'd be shocked if I don't see it. I would be shocked.
Well, the conspiracy theory, the tinfoil hats are coming out, right? I mean, if we don't see him tomorrow, there better be some answers beyond, he showed up to training late, however many weeks ago. Full disclosure is always dangerous. We outlined this on the post-game show. I'll always defer to the team keeping something close to their chest if it affects game planning for the opponent or for any reason, because as fans, sometimes we don't deserve to know everything. But, it's difficult to keep the pitchfork mob at bay, especially if we don't see him tomorrow. So I think if we need to see him tomorrow. Not only does he deserve the look, but it's getting difficult to understand why,
And two more points on that, on Alex Bono. Like, I still don't really fault him for this because this is still a side of his game that he's figuring out. But that goal against Cruz Azul where he was chipped on, it's because he's cheating a little bit because balls have been beating TFC over their back line. So he wants to be the one to come out and kind of sweep that up, which is something he's talked about. He was caught a little bit off his line because he was probably anticipating the ball over the top. Maybe perhaps it runs away a little bit and he could be the first out there. So he got caught there. And secondly, this past weekend against New York Red Bulls, maybe he was, had that chip into the back of his mind, but he was a little bit too far back on his line on that second goal when that ball was played through. And he kind of got to the play. He kind of made a play on it, but it wasn't quick enough. It wasn't early enough. Quentin Westberg excels in that aspect of the game. He excels coming out of his box when he needs to. He excels when reading the game as to when he should be on his line, when he should be out. He's more mobile than Alex Bono is. So like I said off the top, it's not just saving shots, which again Alex Bono has done a really good job at. It's a lot more than that. And yeah. That's all I'll say.
Mitch looks like he's going to explode. So he's
no. I'm just saying, hold on a little bit. Like Westberg got chipped at least 3 or 4 times last season where he came out of net for like the exact same reason that like I think it was Federico Higuain at MLS's back maybe who chipped him it was a pretty ugly one. I think he got chipped twice in a row in one of those games, maybe against DC. So I think this is a larger systemic issue with Toronto FC where those balls over the top can beat them and then it puts their goalkeeper in a like unwinnable position. So I don't know if I'd fully fault Bono for that. Although I do agree Westbury is definitely the better sweeper keeper. I think it simply comes down to Toronto FC need to try something different, and this is a simple way you can try something different is putting in a new goalkeeper.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I
don't
think,
give us the opportunity to bash Bono at this point, right? Like, because we're gonna, we have two number ones, but if we don't see the other one, it's human nature to start bashing the guy.
Well,
right?
like, sorry, I'm not. I don't mean to bash Bono. I'm not trying to bash Bono whatsoever. Like, those are clearly still aspects of the game that he needs to work on. But he is still a good shot stopper, like I said off the bat. Like, he is still a good keeper in Major League Soccer. It's just, if you have two number one keepers, like you've been saying, why haven't we seen one of the number ones? That's the difference for me. And clearly a number one over the past 2 seasons who has been better than the guy who's in net right now. It's just like you guys have said, there's an easy change there to make to sort of give your team a spark, which they desperately need. And I'm a little puzzled why we haven't seen it as yet. So again, I don't want to bash Alex Bono. Alex Bono has been solid. I still think he does have a future here in Major League Soccer. But I'm just puzzled why we haven't seen the other number one goalkeeper yet.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about a move that Toronto FC made today, letting go of Griffin Dorsey. They put him on waivers, 22-year-old winger fullback, only played 5 matches with Toronto FC over 3 seasons. Most of the bulk of his time with the organization was spent with Toronto FC 2. Was, of course, taken 6th overall in the 2019 MLS Super Draft, which will cause some consternation considering who he was taken ahead of, particularly 2 Canadians, Dane St. Clair, Tejan Buchanan, obviously. Hindsight 50-50 on our 2020. Yeah.
Hindsight 20. Hindsight's 50-50. Yeah. It's an endless circle.
It's another botched quote. I mean, that's part of the show at this point too.
Yep.
I think I'm more interested in, what Toronto FC still might be doing here. I don't know if this move necessarily predates that or if this is opening up a spot for Kamar Lawrence, who we already know is coming in, but we've heard a lot that Toronto FC are still looking to make at least 1 or 2 minor moves to kind of shore up the team. We have the fullback. That was the main position you pointed to, Michael, as what you thought Toronto FC need. What else does this club potentially need in order to, get back to where we think they can get potential-wise?
Yeah, I think it was John Molinaro who actually reported this week that TFC are looking to make 1 or 2 moves before that June 1st, I believe, is the deadline for the transfer window. So we might see 1 or 2 more moves come in here, and obviously Griffin Dorsey making way. I don't think that's much surprise to anybody who's seen TFC of late, or the last 2 years, because we haven't seen Griffin Dorsey. So why put more time into his development when there are other people who you could use there? And we talk about Kamar Lawrence, who's more MLS ready for a team that wants to win now. Griffin Dorsey is more of a fullback, so obviously that just makes sense to sort of waive him. So we do wish Griffin Dorsey the best of luck there. In my opinion, in terms of the position that Toronto FC need to shore up right now, 2 things, and I think it was one of them became really evident on Saturday, and that was more so a number 10 as well, maybe a backup number 10. I'm not saying someone who can come in and kind of take away minutes from like an Osorio or even like a Delgado, but someone who's capable of pulling strings there in the number 10 role if you need to. And the second one, of course, is a center back, for me at least. So we can talk about why. I mean, we don't really need to talk about why. We know why this team really needs another sort of center back, another option there just in case. So those are my 2 choices there. I don't know how you guys feel about that, Jeff.
I have 2 takeaways. I like that he's been talking about Dom Dwyer this whole time, and he called it a minor move, which is fantastic. And number 2, I'm surprised he went for a 10 and not a 9, because Ayo hasn't looked very good so far. That could just be him coming off of injury or et cetera, et cetera. But to me, as much as I love my boy Patrick Mullen, and my love for him is real, I wonder if, a 9 hasn't re-entered the conversation.
So, I mean, you have Josie Altidore.
Do we?
You have Ayo and Ayo at Canola. Like, there's no reason to hit the alarm bells yet for Ayo. Like, yes, he hasn't looked good, but how can you expect Io Akinola to look good in a game like against the New York Red Bulls? Like, he's not
No,
the
I
type
agree.
he's not the
I
type
agree
of
with
player
that.
to create on his own at all. Like, he's not someone who's going to take somebody on 1v1, beat him off the dribble, and sort of create a half chance for himself. That's just not the type. He's a guy who feeds off great service. And when you don't have that service, then those guys are going to be very. And Josie's the same type of player as Io Akinola is. They're both great poachers in the box. They're guys who can hold up play when they need to, but they're not guys who are going to turn and run at defenders. And right now, I think that's sort of what this team is lacking. Guys who can set up both Akinola and Altidore. So you have
And
two,
score themselves potentially. Okay, I get you. I feel you. Yeah.
So you have
Okay.
two proven number 9s there that are, standard, classic number 9 poachers.
Yep.
And again, you throw in Patrick Mullins as depth. He's a serviceable depth guy. And then also Jordan Perusa. So that's a position that they're kind of deep on. Also, don't sleep on Achara as well. He's also a player who can come back and kind of play in that sort of mix. So
Okay.
for me, I number 9 just isn't an urgent need for me.
Okay, Michael, follow up. We got one roster spot. Do we go for a center back or do we go for a 10?
I go for a center back, in my opinion.
Okay.
In my opinion, because I do believe in Pozuelo. I do believe in Osorio. When you have both of those guys out, it is kind of just tough. But if you had to choose one, I think you go for a center back right now.
Okay. The one position I'd argue that maybe they should look into, and I know obviously Gallardo's on the shelf, and they just brought in Soteldo, and
Junior Hoylett.
This is always the thing, but a TAM winger, because it doesn't have to be a TAM winger. Just a wide midfielder in general, because I'd argue
on the right side.
Yeah, on the right side, because I'd argue Mark Delgado has not looked good there, and I don't think he can play that role.
But what if they have one on their squad already? What about Richie Larea?
They
with
could
the addition of Tamar Lawrence, right?
I'd agree with that. Like, I think that is a possibility. And I think in their best 11, he does play there, but I do think you want at least one more person to cover there, whether that's internally a young player or
Junior Hoylett.
Well, you have Jacob Schaffelberg, who's going to be looking for minutes now as well. You can also throw Jaden Nelson into that mix. You could also throw Jaquil Marshall-Rudy into that mix, and of course, we talked about Erickson Gallardo and Achara. So
wait a second, Mike. You want to put Schaff on the wrong side so that he's going to cross on his weaker foot?
He can't get worse at crossing. I mean,
that's true. Maybe we'll try the right foot.
With the right foot.
Yeah. No, I don't mind seeing Schaff cut in a little bit, and sometimes when you're playing on that right winger, you don't actually have to play as a right winger. You kind of play through the middle, especially when you have someone like Richie Larea behind you, and you can sort of cut in and free up that space for Richie. So there are ways to kind of get around just go running down the line and hitting across.
I'm all for it if it means he doesn't have to run across the touchline and hit across, but actually combine with somebody. That may be a better fit for Schaff.
Yeah, there's a lot, and like you said, Mitch, I'm there with you. Delgado on the right side. We talked about this on our pregame show. Like it's not working. Like, he looks way too uncomfortable at times in terms of trying to find the right pass. I think, we could give him some time there to adjust. To me, there's better options there to throw on the right side of the diamond, if you wanted to play a diamond. So yeah, I'm there with you in terms of we definitely need a different look there than Mark Delgado. I think we do have depth on this squad if we just need one more player instead of that number 9 or that right winger spot.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, that's just the most glaring position, I think, against the Red Bulls that we saw Toronto FC get exploited was that right-sided midfielder. I think that turned out to be a major issue. And again, that's nothing against Mark Delgado. We know what he can do. It's just any player is not great at a position. And I think even Oso can play out there. I think Oso's a much better look as a wide midfielder than Mark Delgado is. So hopefully, again, we'll get some of those guys back. Actually, let's finish up with the Michael Singh injury report. Is that what it's called?
Okay. Yeah, here it comes.
It's the Michael Singh injury report.
I should have told you, boys. I don't have an injury report right now because I'm about to go talk to the TFC media, actually. So
it's not the Michael Singh injury report.
there you go.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'll add is the Jonathan Osorio tidbit we kind of mentioned on our show last week. Jonathan Osorio obviously we thought he'd be available for Saturday's match against New York Red Bulls after coming off a little bit early against Cruz Azul. Obviously, he had that ice pack on his thigh. By all accounts, on Thursday, it looked like he was ready to go. And then, obviously, he wasn't in the side. Chris Armas told us after the match, when I asked him about this, was that Osorio picked up another knock in training on Friday. So the day before the match. And it, again, same area, upper thigh. Dr. Tej was on our post-game show, and he kind of explained that sort of injury to us. And it's something that it's kind of unpredictable. It can kind of spark up whenever, flare up whenever. So, you got to, I guess, inject them with a lot of anti-inflammatories, but there's not much there that you can do. We don't know, Colin, I see you asking there in the chat, what exactly is Paz's injury? We don't know the exact, diagnosis of Paz's injury. We know it's a thigh injury. We know he suffered it against the Columbus Crew on April 1 in a preseason match. But other than that, there's not much there that we can tell you. We've heard it's a tricky injury, a tricky situation. So that's all I can sort of reveal there on that note.
Well, and also Tej added a wrinkle that I thought was really interesting, which is that, Paz may be saying to the medical team, I'm not feeling ready to play. Despite their protestations, like, go out there and let's see what you can do. Nobody knows their body more than the person who's living in it. And we've been eliminating that variable. And I think it's important to reintroduce that, right? He could be looking out for his own best interests over and above the recommendations of the TFC medical staff.
Yeah, so on the TSN broadcast, I said Paz would be out 7 to 14 days. I personally haven't confirmed that, but usually when they say something, it's pretty much as good as gold. And we'll get a further update actually right after this show. So keep it locked to me on Twitter at Michael Singh 94, and I will definitely get some updates for you on Toronto FC's injury situation. You can bet on that.
Yep.
The best part of that was when they said that on the broadcast. Jeff thought they said 7 to 14
weeks. I thought they said weeks. Yeah,
and he freaked out. He was losing his
Lost
mind
my
for
mind.
a couple seconds.
Lost my mind. Yes. Well, because it was just so nonchalant. It was like, oh yeah, that guy that like is the engine for the whole team. Well, what's that? A unicorn over there? He's not coming back ever. Like it seemed very blasé, and with weeks, it was like, wow, guys, that was
the positive takeaway. No pun intended there for pause, but positive takeaway is that we have a timeline, right? Before it was just he's close, he's getting close. Yeah, he's almost there, but now. 7 to 14 days. When that 14-day mark comes, if he's not there before the 7, we'll be looking for Paz. So it does appear that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but there's a lot of matches coming up right now. We talked about a little bit about Columbus on Wednesday, and there's New York City FC, who's also undefeated so far this season, on Saturday. So if you don't have Paz for both of those matches, and you guys put in the same sort of performance that you did on Saturday, that's a big hole you got to dig yourselves out of. So I don't expect TFC to kind of lay an egg like they did against New York Red Bulls once again.
Well, it'd be great to have him back against NYCFC because we all know what he can do to that franchise and what he's done to them in the past. So hopefully, best case scenario, Pozuelo is back for that game, and Toronto FC put in a better performance tomorrow. But I'm trying to catch the Leicester City match here, boys. So
one more tidbit. Kamar Lawrence is there, and he is training with the club. So there actually is a possibility that he does get into the match tomorrow against Columbus. What kind of role he'll play, that's obviously remains to be seen. But it looks like, he's gone through his quarantine period that he needed to, and we're all good to go.
Yeah, cool. And definitely helps that, that's a player that Armas is familiar with, knows his strengths, has coached him before. So in terms of his transitioning into the Toronto FC side, I think that is a major factor. But that brings us to the end of our show. Always great to catch up with Brendan Dunlop. Check out his new book, D-Row, My Life, wherever books are sold. Jeff was very excited about the chapters he's read. Jeff?
Oh, I like that you the punctuation on our show announcement actually reads like the book is D-Row My Life with Brendan Dunlop. So it's like a buddy. It was like a buddy book
buddy
about
movie,
them taking road trips together.
Yeah.
And I got a kick out of that. But you want to watch your team lose, so let's go. Let's get off there.
All right. It's not available wherever books are sold. Thanks to Kevin and Sophia for all their work behind the scenes as usual on the show. Thank you to Divine Wi-Fi for being better this week. We really appreciate that. And a huge thank you as always to all of you for listening, interacting, watching. It makes the show that much better. On behalf of Michael Singh, Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mitchell Tierney. Till next Tuesday.
Ciao.
Cheers, guys.